It's the Underpowered Hour. On this week's show, we talk about a new 6x6 Defender, a huge spike in Land Rover Defender thefts, and finally, we're joined by Camel Trophy 95's Daphne Greene and Jim Swett to talk about all of their adventures. And now, without delay, here's the show. Welcome to the Underpowered Hour. I'm Steve Barris, mild-mannered television executive by day and Land Rover collector by night. You can find out more about our cars and what we're working on at thebarriscollection.com or follow us on Instagram at thebarriscollection. I'm joined, as always, by my good friend, Ike Goss.
Thank you to everyone joining us today. I'm the lack of safety features to Steven's side curtain airbags. I'm the cervical fracture of podcasting, Ike Goss. I own and operate Pangolin 4x4 in Springfield, Oregon, where we live and breathe Land Rovers. Check us out online on Facebook, Instagram at Pangolin 4x4. Let's get started.
All right, Ike. Well, in the news this week, I know you're a fan of two things in this world. That's six-wheel Land Rovers and the new Defender. Well, you are in luck, my friend. Finally, two worlds have collided into the world's first new Land Rover Defender 6x6.
I didn't think it would happen. Here we are.
Here we are, right? You know, we thought just yesterday that it wasn't possible. Here's the thing. This is an article in the DuPont Registry, known for its classified ads for used Rolls Royces and expensive champagne reviews.
I feel like the target audience of the DuPont Registry is not the ultra wealthy. It is the 17-year-old boy.
Absolutely. That is 100% true. I don't think they're even trying. I think that's exactly. That's interesting. So in this article, we'll put a link in the old show notes so that everybody can head over, because really you can't completely, like the Matrix, you can't completely appreciate this thing without experiencing it for yourself. There are some photos, but I have to say, the photos are highly dubious. The completed car is very clearly and without question simply a rendering. Like, it's a poor Photoshop job. And then there's also some photos of someone in a garage somewhere grafting extra length onto a Land Rover Defender.
There's a big gap between the real photos and the finished rendering, right? Like, this thing has giant tires on it, and they've got a Defender with giant tires on it. Yes. And then they have a forklift behind the Defender with another axle with giant tires on it.
Yes,
so,
and it's literally just a regular Defender in one of these photos. And the axle's just kind of like here, like it would be here. I could make this photo with my car without too much effort. Now, there is another photo where they do have some body work where it's clearly been extended into kind of a truck bed. But if you look underneath, the superstructure underneath there does not look particularly solid or remotely roadworthy. So it looks like it's a ways off. It's a ways off.
The rendering is amazing for a few different reasons. You know, this thing is probably 4 feet off the ground.
Yeah.
And it has a running board which splits the distance between the ground and the door frame.
Yeah.
So it's got a running board that hangs down 2 feet off the side of the car. It's got fender flares that are probably 18 inches deep on each side. Yeah, on each side, and there's a roll bar going into the fender flare, which I love. That's a really nice detail. The roll bar fender flare combo.
The combo. Yeah,
and then there's a spare tire, which has to be like a 42-inch tire.
Absolutely,
on
looks like
hood.
A dump truck. It's a dump truck tire. Yes, and
on the hood of this or bonnet, as some of our listeners are accustomed to hearing. And so it's like taller than the windshield of the car. There's no way you could see out of this vehicle. It has, oh my gosh. I could keep going.
It's really amazing. It's really kind of got everything that you would want. Now, the funny thing
it's got everything a 17-year-old boy
reading the DuPont Registry would want. Now, the funny thing is this particular article, I feel like may have been written entirely by AI, along with generating its own images based on those two images of an actual car getting stretched, because there's just a ton of interesting and highly infactual things. For instance, They say the model is called the Carpathian, but of course the Carpathian is just the highest trim level of the Defender. So I'm pretty sure you couldn't call it that. And then they also call it the Apocalypse a few times. And it's kind of an interesting
And on the
thing,
rendering, where it would normally say Land Rover, it says Ender.
Ender,
E-N-D-E-R.
Yeah.
Ender.
Yeah. Ender,
I like to refer to this vehicle as the rear ender.
Well, the rear ender, because you can't see out of the windshield because of the tire.
No,
so
you have
just
to drive backwards.
Yeah, you're just gonna go. Well, and with the 6 wheels, the traction is much better in reverse anyway. So it's it's an interesting car. I don't imagine one could ever actually buy it, and if it could ever be purchased, it would be absolutely terrible. So
it looks, I think the 107 wagon has the greatest turning radius of any factory Land Rover model.
Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah.
Even more than the Defender 130.
Yeah.
And this thing, I don't think it turns. I think you just have to go in a straight line.
You just have to go in a straight line. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, it's amazing how even longer wheelbases did improve the turning circle over the 107. It was just one of those things where, more than 6 inches in each direction of steering wheel travel probably has something to do with that. But at any rate,
it's an amazing vehicle.
Yeah, it is an amazing vehicle.
Go check it out.
Go to the DuPont Registry's website. Again, the link is in the show notes, and check it out. Hey, let's set up a test drive. I think maybe we can collaborate with these guys. We'll do an underpowered hour edition 6-wheel drive.
New shop truck, the rear ender.
The rear ender. I can't wait. It's real good. It's a real good one. Well, speaking of new shop trucks, the Land Rover Defender's theft rate has skyrocketed by 87%. In the British countryside.
They were a popular target of thieves before this. And so apparently...
this is up 87% from what? From 90% of all of them getting stolen?
So I think every single one has now been stolen.
Every single one has stolen. Yeah, it's serious.
Yeah, they have a lot of recommendations. Yeah. This is in the UK, by the way, which I think suffers from pretty rampant property theft anyway. But apparently the Defender, very easy to steal and also very easy to part out and sell. So,
absolutely. Even in some cases, as it was the case at the Glastonbury Music Festival, you can part them out right there while they're parked. You just take the parts you want, leave the rest. So,
it's true. It's true. Yeah. If you look on eBay in the UK, something like 90% of the parts are stolen.
Are stolen from Glastonbury. Yeah, it's a 87% increase in an already high thing. It is something to think about for sure. And a lot of the early cars, up until the TD5 was the first one with like an immobilizer kind of setup. But you think that was very late in the world of automotive protection to not really have any kind of appreciable way to satisfy not having the entire car taken. And even the Puma, you could take the doors off, you could take the hood off, you could do all that stuff relatively easily.
Yeah, and some of those transponder keys have allowed thieves to steal cars even faster than traditional locks. They just hack the software, and it's pretty incredible. It's pretty incredible.
Famously, it's a Kia, right? Is that the current one that it's such a bad problem that they're telling you to like park them indoors and like. I
saw a Kia here in town. The guy had rebadged it as a Ford to throw off thieves. He put the Ford logos over the Kia logos.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Thieves apparently aren't that smart, so they just see the Ford logo. Oh, we can't steal this.
Can't steal that. Maybe put the Mercedes logo on the Defender. People will just think it's a Glendwagen. Or Ineos. Brilliant. Or Ineos logos.
They do give you some suggestions in this article on how to keep your Land Rover Defender safe. Things like etching the VIN number into every piece of glass on the car, and immobile, like the pedal boxes that clip over your pedals and lock in place,
like the boot, but for your pedals.
Don't post any pictures of where you live or where you keep the car on social media.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
Thieves are going through social media posts and finding out where these Defenders live, and then do that, and then park it near a well-lit area with camera.
Oh yeah.
What were some of the other ones? Keep it locked.
Fill it with poisonous gas.
Fill it with asps.
Yes.
Poisonous asps. keep those in there. It's pretty incredible at the rate that these things get sold. And an 87% increase. How is that even possible?
I don't even know.
These industrious people.
Yeah, this is really incredible. Well, they're having to get more and more industrious. They've stolen most of them already. There's very few left that haven't been stolen. So,
but how can that be if there's an 87% increase?
I don't know. Yeah, well, I think maybe if there's only 10 left and they steal 8 of them, then
if your Defender has been stolen, we want to hear from you. We want to hear all about the situation, how it happened, what happened afterwards. Did you get it back? if your car has been stolen more than once,
we're going to send you a t-shirt.
We'll pay you to be on the show. What's the record for the
what's
Defender
record?
That's been stolen the most number of times?
Like 3, 4, or 5 times. I mean, at some point, it's got to get up there because, there's only so many you can steal. It's like fishing in a lake. At some point, all those fish have been caught once before. So we're going back for a second round now.
Yeah. Maybe your Defender was stolen and parted out and then reconstituted into another vehicle that was then stolen.
I think we start looking for that record. I think that's a worthwhile enterprise.
Put a bounty on that. If your car's been stolen, if your Defender's been stolen more than 3 times, there's a bounty. We want to hear
for
from
sure.
you.
We're going to give you something. We'll send you a Chapman tool set. Apparently, it is the new Range Rover. So the newest, fanciest, most reductively designed Range Rover is now one of the more difficult cars to steal. The theft rate over this first year that it's been out, according to Adrian Mardell, the new CEO of JLR, he said it's near zero, close to zero, that the new cars have been stolen. And in a year, you would think that there would be, if there were going to be a lot of thefts, that they would have happened. And I don't know, maybe that's just too new of a vehicle for people. It's too hard to steal or something. They can't get the door handles to come out. Like, it's all smooth, right? Like, you kind of can't even get your fingers in anything to open it. I don't know.
It'll happen. I'm sure after, a little bit of time, these super cyber criminals will figure it out, and you'll be able to, start that thing with like Apple 80 or something. It'll just happen.
Yeah. Everybody has to get the laptop toting alt teen on their criminal theft team to be able to hack the nets.
Either that, or they'll just be like some coincidental thing that every time you punch in 2 minutes into your microwave, the doors unlock on your Range Rover, it'll be something like that, and then that hack will spread like wildfire through the internet, and they'll all be stolen.
Well, it's, I think, a fairly well-known thing on the L322 Range Rover, my favorite Range Rover. I think peak.
It's a good one.
Probably peak Range Rover. I don't think they got any better than. If you take the seatbelt and you plug it in and out and in and out and in and out of the seatbelt receiver very quickly, 20, 30 times, it will never bong to tell you to put your seatbelt on ever again.
Wow.
I don't know what it does, but I think I don't know what happens. But anyways, that happens, and the computer no longer tells you to put your seatbelt on. So
the computer knows. It's just fine. Fine, whatever.
I'm gonna die. Fine. I don't fucking care.
Whatever. I'm not going to remind you anymore. We're through. I don't even care about you.
I don't even care about you anymore.
So it's like a little text message that comes on the screen.
Yeah.
I don't even care about you anymore.
Yeah. It just pisses your Range Rover off to the point of indignance.
Thanks, Stephen. Now everyone knows how to hack their Range Rover to remind them.
That's right. I'm going to be responsible for so many through the windshield ejections and high-speed crashes in L322 Range Rovers. I apologize to the world at large. Use these tips again at your own risk. There's a top tip, but it's maybe slightly more dangerous than filling spray cans with compressed air, but that's a lot less annoying when you get in and out of the car. But yeah, so anyways, I actually want an L322 Range Rover. I've been kind of casually looking. They're you can get one for $5,000 now. They're
it's a lot of car for $5,000.
It is. It's a great car. It will definitely need new timing belts and all that sort of business. But usually at about 150,000 miles, that stuff all goes and has been redone. So I'm sort of in the market for 180,000 mile car. Dan and Ivan at Rover Talk about that all the time because Dan's a huge L322 fan. And you get one that's somebody has already done all that shit to it. And maybe it's $8,000 instead of $5,000, but it's a big job to do the timing belts on that car. Apparently, it's a pretty major amount of labor to do it. And me, I don't like new cars at all.
Or labor.
I don't like either of those things. I like driving them, but I don't like having to deal with all their fucking magnesium things and clips and plastics and all that sort of stuff. So, but at any rate, I would have one. I would have one if there was a neat one. I like silver. A silver one would be kind of cool, or maybe that really dark green.
I'll keep my eyes peeled.
I have a Rolls Royce that you would you'd just love.
The one with the rat's nest in the engine bay.
Yeah, what's more than just a rat? I think it's a generational nest. I believe there's probably 30 years of rats that have called that that engine
Can't
home.
even see the engine. There's so much rat nest.
It's amazing. It is really, really incredible.
Those
The interior, though, is in really good shape, which sort of that equation doesn't really balance for me. It was kept in a garage, but I guess kept in a garage with a hole to a giant open field right behind it or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Capital critters.
Jay Leno found an XKE in a garage here in Burbank not that long ago, maybe about a year ago, I think, or something like that. And it was stored for 50 years. It was parked. And then the gentleman, I guess, started drinking and hoarding. And it was when they found it covered with blankets and a radiator and a microwave and just piled. Like literally, you could just see, I guess, the back bumper.
You're describing your own garage.
This is here. He found it here.
I found it in your garage.
It was in my garage. And I guess a Burbank police officer, this gentleman died, and for some reason the Burbank PD got involved. And they I guess they told Jay Leno, they like stopped by Jay Leno's place and like, hey Jay, there's this old car, which doesn't seem fair for the rest of us, but whatever. And they dug this car out and they polished it, and they had to replace, I think, brake and clutch master cylinders, and I think they replaced the wheels because the wire wheels were pretty corroded and probably not safe. But otherwise, it's like a totally original car, original interior, original paint. They popped all the dents from the water heater and stuff out of it, but they didn't repaint it. They just massaged all the dents out, and pretty neat car. He just put a video up on his Jay Leno's Garage website of the first time it's been out actually driving and all polished up and everything. Looks really cool and totally original car. You don't see that very often, especially I think there's 18,000 miles on it or something. Really, really low Series 1 E-Type Jag and convertible, which is not my favorite, but still cool. Still pretty cool.
Very cool.
So yeah. Speaking of original convertibles, we have a absolutely stellar
dynamite
interview today with two Camel Trophy legends, but more importantly, two Camel Trophy legends that did the Camel Trophy together. For the first time in Underpowered Hour history, we have an actual Camel Trophy team, the folks that sat next to each other in the front of that Discovery for 2 weeks, going through the incredible adventure that they did. Daphne Greene and Jim Swett from this year's ANARC. This is coming to, we're not quite at the bottom of the ANARC list, but we're getting through them. We're getting through these incredible ANARC interviews.
These folks are great. I can't wait to talk to these folks. They're amazing.
All right, well, let's thread up that tape and roll it.
Let's go.
All right, we're back again at the beautiful ANARC Diamond Jubilee 75th anniversary of Land Rover celebration here in Cortland, New York at the Greek Peak Resort. And we are joined by yet another pair of Camel Trophy drivers, but in a Underpowered Hour first, the first team to appear together, of course, Jim Swett and Daphne Greene from the 1995 Camel Trophy team here together with us. It's like we're all packed into a Discovery, trudging off-road. At least karmically we are.
It's just as tiresome.
It's just as tiresome, and it's just as wet and musty in here. Yeah, so thank you both for joining us. It is always a huge honor to have any Camel Trophy participants on the show. And Jim, this time we promise we won't delete this episode. The truth is actually that, again, it was so salacious that Mr. Hood made us delete it. So it certainly was not a technical issue. It was just too spicy.
I thought I was behaving myself.
That's right. Yeah, there was a lot of spicy information given out. And so anyways, welcome. Thank you again for joining us. And let's talk just a brief moment here about Camel Trophy 95. Tell us about it. How is it that you folks found yourselves out in the world of competitive Olympic level off-road driving? What brought you there?
Come on, Daphne. You tell this better than I do, so go ahead.
No, I think there was an outreach that was done by, Camel to participants within the United States. I'll let Jim speak to his. I had heard about it from a friend of mine who knew I came from a background of mountaineering and backpacking and triathlons, and so came to it much more from the athletic perspective.
Right.
And I thought, well, typically I'll use a vehicle to get to a trailhead.
Right.
But I certainly didn't have what Jim brought to it. But I had heard about it, and I thought, may as well apply. Let's see. So I trained hard in advance of going to Colorado. And ultimately, well, actually, you submit an application that's reviewed. And ultimately then a certain number of us went to Colorado, train, and then competed there for 30 hours.
Wow.
Doing nonstop.
Nonstop.
Doing both physical, some of the mental handwritten things, and then driving. So I didn't even I remember hearing Jim at one point, but I never even saw Jim until the last, I think it was the last event, and then we were paired together. So let Jim speak to how he got there, but I think that's another story from when we both got together.
Yeah, so and my story is not altogether similar, but fairly similar. I read about it in a magazine. I'd been off-roading since I was a kid, at motorcycles and quads and four-wheel drives. I'd built a bunch of them as well. So actually in 1989 is when I saw the first application for it in the magazine.
Yeah.
Sent in for the app, saw what it was going to entail for time commitment.
Right.
And decided that I was just married and building a new house, needed to do other things.
Right.
Went back and somewhere in mid '94, I saw another blurb in one of the four-wheel drive things. So you want an adventure or something like that.
Yeah.
Like Daphne had said, you send an application in, you send a request for an application in.
Yeah.
Then you put together your resume, fill out the application. That's how they start weeding everyone out.
Yeah.
If you can't answer the questions on an application
Right.
correctly, they don't even call you back.
Right.
Makes sense.
Right.
Around 2,500 people applied our year, which sounds like a lot, but like Germany the same year, around 40,000 people applied for those same two spots. So a lot bigger selections process in other countries.
Sure.
But in the U.S., it was relatively kind of in our own clique of the off-road world.
Right.
So,
Right. And the Discovery, of course, was just new, just like brand new to our market.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And Fred actually, so Fred was just here.
Yep.
He was in the first Discovery for Camel Trophy. It was a two-door or three-door, they call it.
That's right.
So, but no, and then TC, Tom Collins, would call you up on the phone once he saw your resume and your application filled out correctly.
Yes.
And he'd call you up and give you a phone interview. And then that's how we got invited to Colorado.
Wow.
So now the selections process, how does that work? Is that run by Land Rover? Is it run by Camel? Is it run by an outside company? How does that work?
Combination, both Land Rover and Camel. And so Land Rover, obviously, is the vehicle sponsor, wanted to have a say in it, and Worldwide Brand as well.
Yeah.
That was the parent sponsor.
Yeah.
Right.
I see.
Which is a German-based, I think, company.
Yeah.
And by the time our year got there, they gave 50% of the selections money needed to do the selections. And then the market would give the other 50%. That way everybody had a little bit of a say in it. And like Daphne had said, around a day and a half worth of selections process with a bunch of tests and swimming, running, orienteering, cutting firewood, first aid stuff, chainsaw stuff, driving, mechanical.
Driving nighttime.
Yeah, nighttime. Orienteering on foot, orienteering in a vehicle.
Yeah.
Recovery, wenching. Now so my background, unlike Daphne's, was mostly that stuff.
Right.
I see.
Right.
So I felt like my whole life had led me to this path.
Right.
Which was pretty interesting because I'm still doing it, and now I'm old.
Now Fred was telling us that there's a transition between the focus on the vehicles and the focus on the more athletic events and the orienteering and the swimming and these sorts of things. And ultimately you saw that transition, into mountain bikings and kayaking and eventually just boats. Like there was no vehicles at all, really. So in the year that you participated, was that transitioning happening?
It was almost completely happened, just not all disciplines of various stuff. Like we didn't see mountain bikes.
Sure.
But I would say that ours was about 50-50 between off-roading and the physical Testis.
Yeah, it sounds like that was a good fit for your background.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was a great fit.
She was in way better shape than she can easily outswim me.
Yeah.
And easily outrun me.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So
that's a pretty high bar, though.
well, yeah. I mean, I hate running.
Unless being chased by a bear or something. Right. Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I agree with you. Well, so let's talk a little bit about then Land Rover and your relationship with the brand before Camel Trophy. Were you guys into Land Rovers beforehand, or was this sort of exotic British off-road vehicle something new that was introduced because of the Camel Trophy?
Okay. Usually I let her go first. She's way better, more eloquent at this stuff. I had always aspired to own a Land. I love all kinds of four-wheel drives.
Yep.
So, matter of fact, I mean, my first vehicle was a car. I had 22 points from speeding tickets.
Whoa.
So I decided to get a truck.
Right. Yeah.
And then it was like a month later, I was stuck in the woods with my friends out
Yeah.
partying.
Yeah, that's right.
And then I realized I needed another lever.
Yep, that's right.
And that's how four-wheel drive started.
That's right.
For me, and
That's
that was
right.
very young. And ever since then, I've always loved Land Rovers, but they were a little out of my price range.
Mhm.
And where I live, most of them were a little rusty.
Mhm.
Was that politically correct?
That doesn't really
yeah, that's
narrow
right,
down where you live.
I live in New England.
That's
So-
right.
But it just so happened that they were pricier than my first real, what I would consider my first real sport utility four-wheel drive stuff. I got into Toyotas very early, so I was
Yeah.
in FJ40s for a long time.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I had 3 FJ40s when I did Camel Trophy, and then I bought my first Range Rover
Mhm.
and built that. So,
Mhm.
but that's kind of, I love all vehicles. So,
Right.
I mean, I have a problem. I think 7 or 8 registered. All of them have the extra lever.
Right.
We
Yes,
don't
of
talk
course,
about
of
that
course.
being a
Yeah,
problem.
Yeah, we
around
don't.
here.
No,
No,
it's
no,
a
no.
problem, not for me,
Yeah.
but it's a problem around me.
That's right. I was going to say it's only a problem if you admit that it's a problem.
Right.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's fine. That's
I
fine.
have
Yeah.
an unbelievably tolerant wife.
That's right.
So,
I think
and a happy insurance broker.
yeah, that's a very
you know,
good
all of my vehicles
Mhm.
cost less than half
Mm-hmm.
to insure than my wife's one vehicle.
Right. Yes.
So,
Is this how you justify it to her?
absolutely.
That's right. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. How about you, Daphne? What was your relationship with Land Rover before?
A dear friend of mine, actually, when I was 10,
Mhm.
was rebuilding a vehicle, Land Rover vehicle, and ended up taking it from California down to Chile.
Okay.
So I was, one of those ones. Can I help? But really nothing more than that at the time. So I didn't come to it as Jim did.
Right.
Again,
That's-
just a balance.
So
Yeah.
when you saw the article or that the event was happening, was it the athletic portion that appealed to you?
I mean,
Or just
again,
the
the
adventure?
driving, the adventure. I had heard about Camel in '94, but it wasn't open to women. I mean, it wasn't open at that point in time. No, I had heard about it before, but I couldn't. Oh, that's right. I was climbing, I think, in Denali in '94. So I was like, all right, well, '95, I'm in because now it is open to women. I think the combination, because I love to drive, and that combination of the two was really intriguing. And the ability, teamwork is really important to me. And so just all the different aspects of it, I was like, oh, this is interesting.
I think that's something interesting that I hadn't really considered before, is that like Camel Trophy is in some ways a unique event in that way, combining several different disciplines. Like it seems like before that, like a motorsport event was just a motorsport event for the most part. And then athletic events were just that. So it was a lot more specialized. And I really think that the popularity of Camel Trophy came from that sort of fusion or that nexus of all of that going on. I think it really did appeal to a lot of people, really a worldwide interest in this. I went to Bob Ives's farm, as Stephen did too, for the Camel reunion or whatever that they had there. And it was incredible how fascinating and interested people are in the event still to this day, years and years removed from it. Just the enthusiasm that brings to people and the nostalgia, like it's really incredible. And I didn't necessarily appreciate it. Like I saw Camel Trophy and I never got super excited about it. And I've learned so much since spending time with Steven, because he's a real enthusiast. And, I was just blown away by the reception that all the drivers got, all the people that were involved got, everybody wanted every story. It's really cool.
Well, I think it was sort of the really cutting edge of adventure racing.
Yeah.
And what we saw after that was it just boomed across the world. And so that's always been interesting to me. That I think the difficulty is that there was always the association, oh, you must smoke because of Camel.
Right.
And it was like,
right.
no, you can't do this event. You remember those guys from the Canary Islands? You can't do this event and smoke, or if you do, you're not going to do very well.
Right, of course.
Yeah,
You
so-
have to be in great shape.
Right.
And no, it's interesting because I spoke with someone. They were at my shop, and I have the '93 Camel Trophy car, which you both have nicely signed for me. I appreciate that. The interior is covered in Camel Trophy competitor signatures, and someone was a younger person in their early 20s was sitting in it. This is just incredible. I've seen all these pictures. I have Nick Dimbleby's book, and they didn't know that Camel was a cigarette brand. They're just young enough that the thought of a cigarette brand I mean, they'd seen the logo and stuff, but they would never have thought that a cigarette brand had sponsored the race. So I think it's interesting because, especially with Nick's book and things, now introducing this event to a whole new generation of people, they don't make that association of like, oh, that's the brand my parents smoke or something. It's like, no, probably their parents may have smoked, but they didn't. So it's just really interesting. What do you mean? It's the same as the cigarette? I thought it was like, I guess you didn't think about it. And no, it's interesting to think that, of course, now we couldn't do that, but such an iconic thing. And it's funny because in Canada, I always wanted to do Camel Trophy. Don't even come close to having the ability to do that. But being from Canada, it wasn't open to us. And so we had to live sort of vicariously through the bootleg VHS tapes that we would get. Or the magazines that we would be able to get in from friends in the UK or something. Many Nick Dimbleby photos have I seen from a magazine borrowed from a friend in France or something like that. So it's interesting that it was open to the whole world and it was enjoyed and loved by countries that didn't even have access to it, never had a team in it or anything like that.
Jim said there were the year we competed, there was 1 million applicants worldwide for 40 slots.
Right. Wow. That's amazing.
So ultimately, when we finished in Colorado with the U.S. trials, they narrowed it down to 4 of us. We went to Istanbul, Turkey for a week-long competition. And then at the end of that week-long, then they narrowed it down to 2 people, Jim and myself. And then ultimately we trained and then headed to Central America.
So that's a perfect segue because, as I said before, you are the first team that we have ever had on together. And it would be great to talk a little bit about what was that first initial meeting through that training period like, not just getting to know each other, but getting to understand how would you guys be successful in this event? What kind of things did you have to do just to sort of learn about each other and learn to work as a team?
I think that takes us back to, at least for me, takes us back to Colorado and that last, they had kept us at people like sort of, I think they narrowed it down to 12, or they were basically figuring out who were those 4 people going to be. And you could tell it was really the first time Jim and I had worked together closely, and it just worked. I mean, I think we're both energetic and passionate and loud, and so we were able to figure out stuff quickly and accommodate, and I think in that regard it just worked, and that for me took us all the way through to Turkey and then through the event. Just quickly, a case in point: if you have a telephone pole, a really long telephone pole that's really heavy. My skill set is not going to be to do a squat, put it on my shoulder, and sit straight up. But my skill set is, if Jim's going to lift up that telephone pole from one end, I'll come underneath, take the use of my strength of my legs, and push it up, and off we go.
Right.
We just had that ability to understand what each person needed and how we accommodated that, and then we were off and running.
A little tidbit about how I ended up participating right at the very end of the selections with Daphne. It just so happens that when we first got there, we spent the night in a hotel room with one other person. Mm-hmm. So there was 8 guys, 4 girls. Mm-hmm. I was teamed up with a guy, Dave Trachtenberg.
Okay.
That name. He knew at a certain point he was not going to be selected. He did a little embellishment a lot on his. He was a fictional writer for Hollywood. So he embellished quite a bit. They had to drive him to the hotel because they were going to skin him. Because he didn't want to participate once he knew he wasn't going to make it.
Right.
So they came over to me and they said, "Hey, Daphne needs to do this other thing, and you're looking good." That was Bonnie, right? Mm-hmm. One of the other selectors.
Yeah,
wife's was a selections process as well.
Mm-hmm.
She says, "You're doing good, but can we get you to work with her on this other event because that other guy is back at the hotel, probably being drawn and quartered."
Right.
So wait till he hears his name.
Right. Nobody's seen that guy since. So yeah, that's right.
So anyways, that's how I ended up working with Daphne in that initial selections process. We had worked together a little bit because there was some group events, but you really weren't working one-on-one with each other.
Sure.
It was kind of one of those things, and you were teamed up with your roommate for a bunch of things. So we went out driving, like Daphne said, nighttime driving and wenching and recovery. I was his wench person. I was his passenger, like his helper, the Dave Trachtenberg guy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then when we went to swap is when he said, "I'm not doing this anymore." He didn't want to go out and wait around in the mud and do the recovery side.
Stay nicely in the car, nice and dry.
And they said, "You got to get out of here. We'll give you, Jim, you'll give you another person to drive around with, And again, I think Daphne was already done with her driving. I was one of the last drivers, I think.
Right.
And then all of a sudden the next morning, as daybreak, we had to do something with jerry cans or something, running around with jerry cans or a tire or something like that. And she just needed her other partner to be able to meet her in certain, I think it was meeting in certain places and then doing other things. Forget how the whole thing went, but that's when I first started working with Daphne. And once, it doesn't take too long to work with a woman of her caliber to realize that she would not be a problem to have on Camel Trophy.
Right.
So a very big asset.
Excellent.
She can actually think very clearly when things get very hectic.
Right.
I do too, but not maybe as clearly. I'm more focused on some other things. So.
Certainly.
And then
what was the event like in that car? The two of you along with you. That is the universal comment. Anytime we ask that question, it's always like, you can't imagine the smell. One thing for Bob Ives to compete with his brother, they're at least a little bit used to it, but you're in a car with a person you've not known for that long, some journalists, and too much gear apparently to fit in one of those cars. What's that like? What are those? What's the first week? What's getting through the competition like?
Well, sort of a packed question on that one, but
a lot of stuff there.
I think for me, stinky cars, whatever, move on. But I think that it really was just arriving and seeing the unbelievable amount of cameras. It just, everywhere you went, there were cameras. And we're not just talking a couple, we're talking hundreds and hundreds from because every country that was participating had their journalists, a pool of journalists.
Right.
And so you just couldn't get away from it. And it was hard. I mean, admittedly, because I was the first woman. And so everybody was like, oh, she's the first woman, And so that part was like, can you just let Jim and me do what we do?
Right.
So I think that just took some getting used to. You want to go pee in the woods. I don't need somebody there with a camera. Like, come on.
Because they're everywhere with cameras.
Yeah.
Right when you least imagine it, all of a sudden there's a lens. Click.
Like, there's Nick Dimbleby.
A lot of pressure on Jim and me. I mean, that's the thing. It was a fantastic event, and there were also some human interest parts that were difficult. I mean, we were both living in the same tent, and you get an average of 3 hours of sleep a night. And Jim's newly married, and they're like, oh, remember, there was a lot of that extraneous pressure that we really had to say, just be done with it.
Yes.
Just quickly, one evening, it was dark. We were asleep or starting to sleep in the tent, and Jim's like, Daphne, do not move. Do not move. And I'm like, Jim, what's going on? Do not move. Well, apparently the tarantula had come in the tent with, or scorpion had come in the tent with us.
He was walking right here.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Now, when I said she keeps her cool, those kind of things push her a little to the boundary.
Right.
She didn't want to get back in that tent for the rest of the night after we shook it all out. What happened, the reason why it happened is everything was moist.
Yes.
And we had a little time in the daytime, so we hung the tent over some bushes, hung a sleeping bag and stuff over the bushes to dry it out a little more. And apparently somebody had wandered aboard. And so I put the headlamp on it, and at this point, she's not happy with me. And I don't know why it's my fault, but it happens beyond me. So we got it out of the thing and then made sure we shook everything else out. And then finally, maybe you got a little bit of sleep.
But the event was, just amazing. Unbelievable. Just I'll just say, just the people, the countries. So we went through Belize, Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, and back to Belize. And you're in the Guatemalan mountains, and just the sheer beauty was stunning. Absolutely stunning. And so the people, and then, you have the competitions. You've got, 30 hours of nonstop competition on the front end and the back end. And then in the middle, you also have a separate competition. So, you're doing all those competitions, and then you're climbing back in your vehicle, and now you got to drive for another 6 hours. But it was fantastic. I mean, I wish we could do it again, because knowing what we know now, it would, you'd certainly do it differently, I think, but, or just complement it. But it was unbelievable.
That's another perfect segue. We like to ask every Camel Trophy competitor 2 questions. One is, if you had an opportunity to do any other year of Camel Trophy, is there one that you guys would want to do? Obviously, you did yours, and it's fantastic. But if you had the opportunity as a competitor, because I'm sure you guys worked with the Camel Trophy as all competitors do. But if you had a year you could do, that you could add, they'd let you get back in and do a second term, which one would you want to do?
All of them. I mean, all the places they went were really interesting.
Cool.
So to me, it's going to different places. I mean, off the top of my head, I would have loved to gone to Russia.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Siberia.
Yeah, that would be cool. I mean, I think I enjoy cold weather slightly more than Daphne does. So
yeah, that's right. What about you, Daphne? What's another one you would
I think I was lucky enough to be a support driver in 1996 with Kalimantan.
Yeah.
And we had real mud then. When we were in Central America, Munda Maya, it was very dry because they were in the middle of a drought. And so that impacted the driving.
Right.
And so you were sort of always anticipating it's going to get more challenging.
Right.
And while we had challenging portions, I don't think it was not nearly what I experienced in Kalimantan in 96. So for me, I think I would say anything from 96 to Jim's point going back. Because but I think I feel really blessed that we had that time for both the physical competition mixed in with the driving and then just the pure driving.
Ours was more, the mud wasn't the problem in ours, the heat.
Right.
So, I mean, there was journalists dropping all the time and they weren't doing anything.
Right.
And the Italian, one of the Italian teammates, he had heat exhaustion 3 times before they pulled him.
Right.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So, there was a couple times it was like 115-ish in the shade.
Yeah.
And 97% humidity.
The humidity was brutal.
Right.
Lots of bugs.
Yeah.
It was very,
I think I know I dropped like 10 pounds.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know what you dropped, but yeah, it was a lot.
Wow. And what about the vehicle? You guys obviously a 5-door Discovery. If you had an opportunity to do it again in a different vehicle, what's your second favorite Camel Trophy Land Rover?
What did you drive in Kilimantan?
110.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the 110.
Yeah.
110.
110.
That seems to be the universal response.
Yeah.
That's what everybody agrees on. The consensus vehicle is the 110.
Is the 110.
I couldn't apply for support driving in 96. We were having our next child.
Right. Yeah.
So I went back in 97 for Mongolia,
Right.
drove the ambulance, which is a 110 with a doctor and a dentist in it.
Nice.
That was it's so much more relaxing when you're not.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what
You
Tim
don't have to be
Yeah,
in
that's
forever
what everybody
shape.
says,
You
yeah.
know,
Yeah.
you can hang out a little bit. You can yell at other competitors. So
That's fantastic.
So tell us, what's the next adventure? What's the next challenge?
we just sold our big house. I'm about to build another house. So
Excellent.
That's a big challenge.
I've built all of our houses. So
Wow.
I don't want to do my last 20 years in a house I didn't build.
Wow.
Fair enough.
Well,
Yeah,
when
that's right.
you have a slot next, I need one.
Okay, no problem.
Well, hopefully it'll be a lot more than
And-
20
and-
years
and
as well,
Daphne?
Jim.
What's your next adventure?
Well, there's what is and there's what you would like.
to
Right.
do.
And those two things, so home repairs, necessity.
There you go. Similar to mine.
Exactly.
Right.
She
Yeah.
probably wants me to come over and put some windows
Yeah,
in
it
her
makes
house.
sense. Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
Exactly. But I would love to do another extended backpacking trip.
Mhm.
Cool.
I would love to do that. And also a certain driving trip
Yeah.
that for right now will remain quiet.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, don't let anybody know. It's
There's a
secret
few
driving
driving trips that I would
Yeah.
like to do before.
Yeah.
Are you able to talk about them?
I would like to do some stuff in South America.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
I've been back to Central once or twice.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I brought the family a little bit. We did some adventures over there.
Yeah.
So I'd like to check out. Well, there's a lot of countries I like to check out. That just happens to be.
Argentina is wonderful.
Well, I've been to Argentina.
Yeah.
With Land Rover, we spent a week or two over there, maybe more. I forget. It was a big press event.
Cool.
That was awesome. Actually, one of the best trips was back to Belize for us. I mean, the Belize trip, and everybody's probably seen that photo of the LR Discovery, LR
No, it's a Discovery.
Discovery with the breaking over the hood, the
Mhm.
water.
Yeah, yeah.
It's way beyond what you're supposed to do for water depth.
Right.
And that was the Belize trip. You were there.
Yeah.
And that was probably one of the funnest trips that I've done because there was so much water.
Right.
I mean, it was supposed to be dry then, and it was very wet.
It was very wet.
We were supposed to get to a bridge.
Yeah.
And we were in water, it was kind of hovering around this deep for miles before we got to the bridge.
Oof.
And then we had to turn around because the bridge was apparently about 8 feet underwater. And 3 weeks before that, it was 15 feet above the water.
I remember
Oh, my
I remember
goodness.
on that event crawling through the passenger side door to get to the driver's seat, but I had to cross over a journalist. Actually, it was an exec who will remain nameless, but
Uh-huh.
just to get back into the seat because there was so much mud and it was just that was fantastic. I mean, I think some of those Land Rover adventures
Yes.
that Land Rover Corporate does around the country, whether it be a Moab or they were doing some in Jordan or South Africa, or in this case, Belize, were just unbelievable. And you think that customers who may not own a vehicle, or they
Right.
may, just arrive and this is their experience. And it's something that they will never forget.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
Those are really, some of those doors, I always say I feel blessed, both in the work with Land Rover and then in the state of California that we've been was able to do, as a result of Camel Trophy. And what a great door to open.
Well, and now both of you, sort of to start wrapping up here, you work with Land Rover, and you get the opportunity to introduce brand new people to what these vehicles can do. These new vehicles can do, bringing new people into this community, bringing us new podcast listeners, which we appreciate. But what's your favorite part about a brand new Land Rover owner, maybe in Defender, going out with you the first time and really starting to realize, what these machines are capable of? Is there something you see time and again that is sort of something that keeps you wanting to do it?
It's pretty rewarding to see people that have bought something that they want to use, and that they just want to learn about it, and the things that the little things that seem like they're like second nature to us because we live around the vehicles all the time,
right?
And they start realizing that what this button does or what that program does, and it opened their eyes up to a whole different world, because a lot of times the vehicle, if you use it right, it will work a lot better for you.
Right.
So being very general, I guess. But
yes. Right.
This weekend, the 3 times I've been up on the trails, have been in all 3. It just happens to all 3 be in 2004 Discovery 2s that are new to the people.
Right.
So it's a lot easier to explain those buttons.
Sure.
Because the new buttons do a lot more stuff.
There's a lot more functionality in the newer vehicles.
Yeah.
No, that's
and
great.
I think Daphne's fairly similar. I always see her glowing when she's out and people are getting, the light bulbs are coming on. That's what we like to see. So
that doesn't mean that sometimes you don't feel like you're a shrink.
Right.
Sometimes I'll be like, my degree is not in psychology, because some of those dynamics that occur, whether it be a husband-wife team, oftentimes, the man will drive in the morning and in the afternoon he thinks he's an expert. So now he's telling his wife what to do, and you can see her begin to bubble up, and, or you'll see women where you'll say, do you want to drive? And the response is, no, I don't need to. Well, I didn't ask you if you needed to.
Right.
I asked you if you wanted to.
Exactly.
And so some of that is just being able to quiet all those voices that are going on inside and just enjoy the moment. It is it's a magical moment to go and look at the scenery and the vehicle that will do it, and so comfortable. We've all been in other vehicles and for days teaching, and then you get back into a Land Rover, you're like, this is why I love it. I mean, they get it.
Yeah.
And that beauty of that vehicle is just outstanding. And in places in Moab, they're like, we should not be here. And this person, it's the first time they've been off-road, and the smile that they have on their face and that level of self-confidence, but not too much. It is one of those magical moments. Jim certainly does still more training than I do necessarily, but it brings you such joy.
Well, that is fantastic. Well, Ike and I are very lucky to definitely have 2 partners who are significantly better drivers than we are, both professional rally drivers. And Daphne, for you, just quickly, that is, I know, such a huge thing for Jenna, who you've spoken with, and my wife, Liza, who you haven't had the benefit of, but to break the trail in such an incredible event, to be the first woman to do that, to inspire generations of women to get into, a space that has traditionally been reserved only for men, or thought to be, really, I think, has enabled things like the Rebel Rally that Liza and Jenna compete in. And I know you were an enormous inspiration to that crowd of people. And so, for that, we as members of that community, thank you. And hopefully we see a bunch of girls out there learning how to do this. And, my little 9-year-old Cooper is already sitting passenger seat with Mom, learning how to press all those buttons and how to do all that, and is just about tall enough to drive my 80-inch. So we're nice. I'm sure that generation will certainly surpass everything that we've accomplished, and that's large in part to you folks breaking that trail, and we as a community really appreciate you guys for that. So
thank you
for having us.
Thank you. And you're welcome to come back anytime. We cannot possibly cover even a fraction of a Camel Trophy event in only one short podcast. But again, thanks for being with us. Thanks for being here at the Diamond Jubilee and hanging out with the Land Rover crowd, such as they are, the tribe, the gang, whatever you want to call them. Everybody appreciates seeing you here and being with us. So thanks again for joining us.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, man, it's such a pleasure to chat with those folks. And, it's the funny thing, like Tim Hensley, Jim, of course, also has like a whole separate automotive interest set from Land Rovers, right? He's super into Unimogs.
He's interested in Unimogs and early Toyota mini trucks, and super fun to talk to him about those. I've got a Unimog, little Unimog habit on the side as well. And so we had a lot to talk about there. Those crazy agricultural Unimogs are pretty fun, pretty interesting. Mechanically. So
when you're already the Scarface of Land Rover ownership, you need something on the side. You need a little extra kick, something to just keep things interesting.
I'm not sure I understand your analogy there. Are you saying that I am to Land Rovers like Scarface is to cocaine?
That's what I'm saying. Yes, exactly. Yes, I think you understood the analogy exactly.
All right.
Yeah, and the Heflingers and the Unimogs and things are just a little bit of crystal meth on the side or something. I don't know. I guess.
Yeah,
just a little bit. But no, it was wonderful to talk to Daphne. Obviously, an incredible part of women in off-road history, and just generally a really wonderful person. Really nice.
And
to
just
chat.
an advocate for wild spaces. That's
absolutely.
Great. Yeah.
And her and Jenna became fast friends at dinner at ANARC, and I'm sure there will be many stories traded between those folks on the rallying and all of that businesses. Daphne, it sounds like, has been to a lot of the same places and is sort of responsible in a way for a lot of the spots that we like to visit and hang out in. And that's pretty cool. Super cool.
Super neat.
And also great to see Jim again. Of course, Jim was part of our ill-fated attempt to do a podcast at the previous Destination Defenders. So we finally completely righted that wrong. And it was great to talk to him as well. So, all right. Well, we have yet again come to the end of what is another spectacular, just less than an hour of Land Rovering. Unfortunately, we have run out of time for Ike's Nando's review this week, but please keep your photos of Piri Piri and Nando's restaurants coming in. Bob Ives recently sent a photo outside of a Nando's in Namibia, which looked like it was in like a temple or something. It was like a Nando's temple.
We received a photograph from a listener, and she sent us a very tasteful photograph of herself in a revealing photo with some piri sauce that was placed just so.
Just so, yeah.
So if you have similar photos, please send them to Steven.
Yeah. That's right. It's the spicy photos, but not for the reason you think. Anyways, well, at that, it's been a slice. We'll see you next week.
All right. Take care.
The Underpowered Hour is produced by Liza Barris, Ike Goss, and me, Steve Barris. Pavel Svardov composed and performed our theme music. Consider supporting the show on Patreon, and if you already do, thank you. Your support makes the show possible. For even more, check out our Instagram or Facebook.